All right. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Revenue Revolution podcast, sponsored by Jointflows. Great to be joined by Peter today. Peter is the CMO at SetSail, and prior to that has got vast experience. And so I'm really excited to be able to tap into all of the knowledge that you've got within you today as well. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's great to be here. Real pleasure.
Awesome. Anything you want to add to your introduction? Anything the listeners should know about you?
No, I don't think so. I think, CMO of SetSail and, been in marketing, particularly in revenue oriented marketing for all my career.
Yeah.
Started back at Netscape, if that gives you an idea of how long I've been at it. So.
Awesome. Brilliant. So let's get into it then. And a good starting point usually is talking about the current climate. Obviously, that's very topical at the moment in terms of how businesses are trying to create efficiencies, how they're attaining the results that they're attaining as well, and what kind of challenges they're coming up. When we're thinking about marketing as a function, how are you seeing that role evolve to align with the new challenges? Ultimately, most businesses are trying to generate revenue and everyone's working in that direction, and the idea is to work cohesively towards that. So how are you seeing the role of marketing change over the last 12 months or so?
Yeah, it's interesting. So, and there's a theme that I'm probably going to come back to a few times, if that's okay, is really looking at sort of a flywheel type approach.
Yeah.
And so when I think of that, I think of it really in terms of three main stages. And so, that's sort of general awareness and visibility, it's pipeline through close, and then it's renewal and upgrade. And so I'm sure we'll talk about that in more detail, but just to answer your question, the way I've been seeing it more recently is an increasing shift towards the latter, the third element, which is the idea of the upsell and the retention. Yeah. So you have a lot of companies right now that are, looking at efficiencies, seeing which tools and technologies that they can cut back on, just trying to streamline their operations and just not be spending money on things that they didn't need to. And, in the previous 2-3 years, lots of money being spent on gambles, things that potentially could lead to something interesting, potential growth, flashy things. But now, you're in a period of retrenchment where you're looking at what can you pull out. So for a marketer at this time, the thing that has really changed the last 12 months is proving that value that you've got, making sure that, folks internally understand what you're really delivering, how it benefits you. And it's an opportunity to, potentially actually even grow. Like, it's not just to stay static, but it's potentially to grow if you can really do a good job of proving your value.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're seeing, I think it's interesting what you said around all of the tools that were onboarded in the last 2-3 years. Many people invested in single point solutions where perhaps there was coverage over the problems that were trying to be addressed in existing tools as well. And so we're seeing at the moment a lot of tech consolidation happening as well. So from your kind of view and your positioning, if somebody is to sell into SetSail, how can the seller differentiate themselves and find a position for themselves within your tech stack? What's important to you?
Yeah, so there's, when I think of it in terms of like, what can it's not just what we can bite off, it's like what we can digest.
Yeah.
And so if it doesn't fit into the stack in multiple ways, from like it being sustainable from a process perspective, from it being able to push data into our single source of truth effectively, then it's just not going to work. Like there's just too many tools that are great in principle, but from an operational perspective, you just can't pull it off because the integrations are too tough. The data is too tough. It's too tough on a daily basis to manage it. So I'll give you an example. So one of our tools is a demasking tool that's used for, identifying which companies are on the website. And it's, if you can't, go from, great, there's a company X that we've been trying to target. If you can't get that over to the SDR team, if you can't add that into a marketing campaign, if you can't do the things that actually action that technology, you're just wasting your time. So ROI, great, that's fine. But proving that you can actually work within our process, that's what matters. And for us, we don't have a gigantic marketing team. We're mean and lean, and so we don't have 10 people that we can just throw at a process and hope that it works.
Yeah,
really, really interesting. I agree. I think there's a lot of piping and plumbing to be done every time configuring a new tech to be added to your stack. What I'm really curious about from your experience, Peter, is the relationship between marketing and sales. Like I've seen the relationship being great, fruitful in some companies where they work side by side and they work well, but
Right.
also seen like finger pointing companies where, oh, marketing should generate more leads, well actually sales should be doing closing this.
Right.
What's a good baseline for you to operate efficiently between these two departments?
Yeah. I'll give you like the sort of the tactical answer that I think of, and then maybe I'll step back a little bit. So from a tactical perspective, I think the number one thing that you can do is have shared goals and shared definitions. If you have those two things, like it's going to be so much easier. So I say both shared goals and shared definitions, because if I'm only concerned about MQLs or been passing leads over, that gets a lot of heat. I know people dismiss that as being, not a great approach. But if you have really good definitions about what an MQL is, that can work. Like if you have, has to be this persona at this type of company with this level of need, you can make it work. It's not the way I approach it, but I don't. A lot of people like to dismiss that as being just a non-starter. I think it is achievable if you're really good definitions. The way that I think is more effective is the shared goal approach, where you care about revenue, and especially if you're in a subscription business or SaaS business where where it's about getting the land and then the expand and then the retention. If a marketer cares about the revenue goal, they're going to be defaulting towards higher quality leads that are going to be passed over, that are easier to convert. They're going to be concerned about sales enablement, sales tools, and all the process on the close, and they're going to care about retention and upsell. So the more that a marketer is tied to a revenue goal, then just the more effective they're going to be. Yeah. So I think that's sort of the quick and dirty answer is those two things.
Yeah, and that's I think the right answer. Something you said earlier in the podcast, you mentioned that there's a shift towards kind of retention and expansions as a bigger portion of the growth engine. And I'm guessing with that, there's a change in metrics as well in terms of what leads is being influenced, because there's already a relationship, obviously.
Right.
How do you navigate that? Well, not internally, but from a conceptual viewpoint.
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's some high level things I think that you ought to look at. So obviously you're looking at net revenue retention is sort of the key thing. But there's ways that. So how does marketing influence that is the nut of your question, which is really you're exactly right. Like how do you separate that from what success is doing or from what the account manager is doing? Yeah, it's not particularly easy. It always depends on like what it is that you're selling. Like if it's something where you're trying to get hands in and making sure that people are in your tool, using it, seeing value, marketing can play a great role there. So it could be you're doing in-app marketing if you're, say, a B2B tech that you're selling. It could be just general usage or engagement with the tech. And marketing plays a big role in that. Like, you're doing campaigns to ensure awareness and visibility around the functionality. You're doing FOMO internally marketing to try and encourage other people to adopt it across the organization. So, although it's ultimately probably more of a shared goal than, say, an MQL would be, there's definitely clear ways that marketing can be influencing that NRR.
Do you feel like the job of the typical marketer role is gradually evolving into more and more of a sales role, perhaps not to the same extent, but way more advanced in that sense?
Yeah, it's interesting because so previously worked at a fintech company, and there were two market segments. One was focused on essentially SMBs, and it was largely self-service. And so marketing played a massive role in that. Like in fact, even the the sales development function reported into marketing. And when folks would come in and they would be looking to do one of these subscription plans that were, just a couple $100s per month, they could come in and they could self-serve, or they could get some questions answered. And it was, an SDR in the marketing team that would generally answer those questions. And then on the other side, there was an enterprise that did require, significant sales and professional services and pre-sales work. But on the more product-led type approach, that was, they barely touched or anyone other than marketing. And for product-led companies, absolutely, marketing is pretty much the start and the end of that first part of the customer journey of getting into that first close. And especially like you hear these days about sellers or buyers not wanting to engage so much with sellers, and it's principally a knowledge question. They want to know whether the product works for them. They want to know whether it's going to solve the issue that they have. And so if marketing can provide answers to those questions through content, through recorded demonstrations, through self-serve demonstrations, through self-serve product adoption, then great, then people are going to be able to buy and move on. And so marketing absolutely can play a role in that, because so much of that is automated. And that's really one of the things that marketers can do well, is automate processes to reach out to the market.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've hit the nail on the head there. We now know in today's climate that a huge portion of the buying process is already done before company will reach out to the software provider. And a huge portion of that, if you're going to be successful, is going to sit with marketing. As you said, it's the content that you're putting out. It's all the collateral that's going out there as well, that's supporting that process. I wanted to talk a little bit about the focus that companies are having now in terms of NRR and how they're generating that, with a huge focus now shifting towards expansion is what I'm seeing as well. How are you seeing that the relationship between marketing and the different functions like AEs and CSMs is changing and evolving to align with that? Yeah,
so there's a lot of ways, and I'm going to miss half of them when we talk through this, but I think one of the ways that's often underappreciated is like in-app. If we're talking about SaaS, if we're talking about SaaS software, then in-app is way too often overlooked. There was a burst 3 or 4 years ago where it became a real big thing. I think marketers have to be paying attention to the signals that are being generated from in-app usage, and then how to market to people through just instantly letting people know that here's this function over here that you could be using. Here's this value over here you could be using. Because it comes back to that problem of how do you make sure that you have people within the company that are just excited to be using your tech and that you can upsell. I love this story from Box, from Box.com, like way back this is probably 10 years ago. Yeah. They were selling to, they were selling principally a consumer-led product, right? That was for file sharing, of course. And what they would do is they would identify power users within corporations, based on IP addresses and where they were located. And they would just go gangbusters after the IT departments of the companies where there were multiple power users, just little islands, little pockets of usage within like Procter & Gamble or whatever. And they would then chase down the IT team and say, look, there's all these users within your company that are doing file sharing. Don't you want to control that? Get our enterprise solution, right? Yeah. And same idea here, where if you have a product that even if it was an enterprise sale and you've sold 1,000 seats into a 5,000 person company, you can still identify those pockets of usage and use them as evangelists for the rest of the company. Or use it for expansion into other divisions, but really understanding how your customers are using it. And that's bread and butter of marketing. They need to understand that ICP with the personas within the target account, within the existing accounts, so that they can upsell across the company. Yeah, that's interesting. Actually, I think that a lot of the time people don't utilize adoption and where the adoption's coming from enough. Yeah. That expansion as well. It's a great tip, actually. Yeah, absolutely. And then there's like the sort of more the classic things that marketing can be doing, for around sales enablement. Myself and my colleague who runs sales, we're tied to the hip with a colleague of mine in product marketing who we just do weekly sales enablement sessions. And this was a joint thing that was kicked off by myself, my colleague who runs customer success and head of sales and product marketing. We're every week is a sales enablement session. Actually, there's 2 sales enablement sessions per week where we're just focused on getting the messaging right and out to the team, making sure that they're equipped with the tooling that matters, from, whether it's data sheets, whether it's content, whether it's demos on the site, making sure people are demo certified, making sure that people are pitch certified so they can do the pitch right. And then we have another session that's devoted to prospecting, making sure that, everyone's engaged in how to prospect within target accounts, how to prospect within existing accounts. And so, just this constant focus on upskilling folks and making sure that we're providing, we're serving the sales and success teams with the tools that they need to be successful.
Yeah, that's great. I think there's certainly a case for visibility and your level of control. So obviously you're only as good as the level of visibility you get. And then if you don't have enough data or if you don't have the right indicators, then you just never know where to go. So I think we speak about a lot on the podcast is the role of SDRs evolving into almost a demand gen engine. So we see very successful SDR orgs essentially doing less outbound and more LinkedIn awareness prospection. Right. Do you feel like the SDR role is going towards a marketing role more than a sales role?
I do. I've for the last 15 years, SDR teams have always reported into my organization, and I'm a big believer in that. There are some things that I think you need to make sure function properly in that mode, like particularly around career progression. You need to have a very close connection with a sales leader. I've been running SDR organizations where we had people that developed and became SDR managers. They went on to classically into an AE or ISR role. But then they also, had people that had moved into more of a sales enablement function. So the career progression is super important. You have to be very aware of that if SDR teams report into marketing. But from my mind, you're right. I think that it's increasingly a great spot for it to be, and it depends on every organization. There's no doubt. But for my perspective, it's great to be in marketing because number one, they talk to more prospects than anybody else in the company, far and away. So they're hearing what messaging works. They're hearing objections. They're hearing this every day over and over and over again. And marketing is the best consumer of that information. Like we're desperate to know what messages resonate best, right? And so being able to take that from the SDR team and hear that on a day-to-day basis is just gold. And then also kind of coming back to that previous company that I was with, where SDRs almost acted like consultants. We had a tremendous amount of inbound. 80% of our business was actually inbound, and SDRs would be on the phone with folks trying to answer questions, guide them to whether it was the right solution or whether it actually wasn't a fit entirely. And so I think that the outbound mass email, mass calling is just going away for many technical reasons, but also because that's just not how people want to buy. They want to understand if it's a good fit, and if you can equip SDRs to be knowledgeable about your product and to act as like advisors, then I think you're going to have a better buying experience.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think it's interesting that you said that SDRs traditionally for you have been reporting into your function for I guess as long as you can remember. And I've been part of organizations where it's worked both ways. So the SD function is reported into marketing, but equally it's also reported into sales. And I've seen it work well in both scenarios. And everyone has a reason for why they feel it should be sitting within sales or marketing. Why would you say the SDR function should be reporting into marketing instead of being a sales function?
Yeah, and I'm not like a adamant about it. Like, you know,
Yeah.
like it does depend. So that you're right. There are many organizations where it just works better in sales, and it definitely is problematic if you do not have that career progression set up, like I was saying. But why I think it works well in marketing, in addition to like the market awareness and the knowledge that you get, is because of kind of what I was talking about at the beginning with that, you know, with the idea of if you can't get the process to work properly, it's going to be a total nightmare. So for me, one of the things that's most important about the SDR function is you've got these inbounds that are coming in, whether it's you know, just companies that are you know, engaging with your content, whether it's people that are filling out forms, whether it's people that are at events, whatever, all these different things. If those programs where someone is early stage, just trying to see if this works, SDR is a perfect person to reach out and act in that consulting role and kind of engage and see if it works. Well, then that needs to be plugged into all those programs, the content programs, the inbound flow, the events, etc. Needs to be plugged in directly. And that just makes it just so much easier when it's in the same organization as the teams that are producing that content, that are generating those campaigns, that are managing the inbounds, etc. So yeah, that's why I feel like it just works better.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, there's one topic I'm wanting to cover. I'm always keen to cover with all of our guests actually is the role of AI.
Yeah.
And how you see that impacting your job, the job of your department, but then also how you see it supported. Like, why is it a good thing? Why is it a bad thing? You know, the conversations we've had throughout the episodes that we've done, you know, people sit on both sides of the fence. Some people are very pro AI, some people are not, some people are very, depends on what it's going to do. You know, where do you sit with that, and how do you feel AI is going to play a role in marketing moving forward?
Yeah. Actually, it's funny because we actually just had a launch yesterday for the next version of our AI product, and that actually gets to sort of a point around how I see AI and marketing with AI is one of the things about the solution that we just announced is it has a chat interface. You can ask questions about sales data. So we're collecting all this sales data about what reps are doing, like you know, are they emailing to power? Are they having good conversations with procurement? You know, what did the transcript look like? You know, what's this cadence of the emails? All of that data gets consolidated, and you can ask any question. You can say, "Who's my top rep?" You can say, "What's closing next quarter?" You can ask all those questions and get dashboards. But what I find interesting is that you need to have a compelling use case for it. Like if I go to ChatGPT, I can go and ask anything, right? You could ask anything. You've got that little search bar, there, little chat bar there, then you can ask almost anything. But with AI, there needs to be a very focused use case in order for the imagination to get lit. It's basically like that cold start problem, where if you don't have a way to start, you know, it's going to be problem. It's going to be a problem. So like, that's why, you know, yesterday when we announced our new AI, the next evolution of the AI solution, it was focused on deal summaries. So what's the current medic state for deal A? How much of BANT is done on deal B? You know, where give me a spin analysis on deal C. And so because it's more attuned to a particular use case, it just makes our job of marketing an AI solution that much easier. And, you know, maybe going outside of SetSail, you know, companies like, say, Lavender, you know, or you know, or what the folks at like you know, even like Salesforce are doing, you know, they're concentrating on particular use cases and not just saying AI, right? That it's just so generalized that it's hard for people to get their minds around. But if you say using AI in order to write better emails, you know, or using AI to, I don't know, to generate stock photos for, you know, for marketers, there's millions of possibilities, but you need to pick one that's particularly focused. Same goes for when you're buying solutions for AI. Like the generalized AI solution, of course it has value, of course it does, but starting with one use case and then branching out from there, I think is the way to go.
Yeah, it's the why. Why do you need it, and what's exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Peter, I've got more of a general question around marketing. I am not a marketer at all, and I do have a lot of admiration for marketers. Do you know, crossing the chasm, you've got different level of buying maturities.
Yeah.
From your experience, which level is the hardest to navigate? Is it from innovators to minimum feature set, like early adopters, early majority? Where do you see like people tripping over a little bit usually?
Yeah, the thing I always find interesting about crossing the chasm is there's there's sort of that bowling pin idea, right? Where you get one company adopted, and then you're able to sort of bridge the gap by proving value in one industry and then moving on to all the other competitors that are out there. What I think is interesting about that is I've never found that to be successful, although I can see how for me personally, but I can see how other companies find it successful, is the industry specific focus. There are many software products or many products in general that do have industry that are effective for, or you can tune to a particular industry and then you can win that industry. So maybe you want to focus on, you're a CRM, but you decide you're going to be a CRM for schools. And so like Power School or something, you're just, that's all you do. And you're just really specialized in it. And then you sell to every school and every school wants you. I totally get how that works. But where I think it falls down is not everything is industry specific. In the bowling pin strategy is really about the idea of finding lookalikes, companies that are suffering from similar problems. And that can be constrained within an industry notion, but it doesn't have to be. It can be, it can be a company with, set of companies within a particular geography. I mean, I remember like there was a company I worked for that was in France, and what they did was they focused on a problem that had been solved previously in other geographies, but they solved it specifically for the French market. It was around it was like a platform for remarketing luxury products. And they just focused on the French market, and that was it. And then French companies bought the heck out of this product. So it could be geography, it could be industry, but it could also just be the size of the company. It could be a particular role within the organization. So that's where I think like the bowling pin, I think, needs to be broadened into the idea of what you're really looking for is lookalikes that you can replicate success with versus being industry narrowed.
Yeah, I agree. And once you've got your niche, you just roll out.
Yeah.
We spoke about. Oh, sorry.
No, I was just a quick aside on that is like even at the company level, but going down to the person level too. That's where I think it's like marketers really succeed when they identify the kind of person, not just the job title. It's the same like at the firmographic level. Like I can say, companies with 1,000 employees in this industry, in this geography. But you want to go way beyond sick codes and the generic things that you can get out of ZoomInfo, and really understand like companies that are currently suffering from exposure to X regulation, or companies that are launching new products in Latin America. Like there's like nuances that just are not coverable in a generic corporate database. It's the same at the individual level, the persona level. Like, again, going back to a previous company, it was a sales enablement tech, and we were looking for Salesforce administrators. So you can find 1 million Salesforce administrators, but the particular one was we were looking for Salesforce administrators that cared about marketing. So what we did was we looked for Salesforce administrators who were in LinkedIn groups associated with marketing. And then, so those were our people. So it's always like going beyond just the standard lookalikes and really trying to understand your customers better. Very good.
Last question, and then we can wrap up. We spoke about the awareness stage. We spoke about the more complex sales processes and sales being involved later on within that buying process. We also spoke about data sources and being able to plumb everything together. And the examples we have at Jointflows is a lot of the buying is done on, software's website like G2 and reviews website, where you can't necessarily see what's happening there.
Right.
How do you work around those limitations, those blind spots as a marketer?
Yeah, I mean, you have to. Some of those solutions do provide some data, and often they'll refer over to your website. Like ultimately, your website is like that's the most critical source of information. Like you're getting people that are coming from G2, they're coming from other content, and when they're there, then you can look at their behavior and understand well, what is it they're looking for. If you've got a diverse content base, then you can start to see what they're doing there. So I think marketing is as data led as marketing it should be. There's a reality that you are going to be dealing with imperfect information. And so being comfortable with that idea that you can still make decisions even without complete information is just something that a marketer just has to live with. So on the sales, like on the sales side, I think there's a different lack of information, and I think it oftentimes it's an overwhelming volume of information. You've got calls, you've got meetings, you've got millions of cadences from outreach and Apollo and wherever else. You've got your Gmail, you've got all these different things, and there little bits of information that you just need to pull together. And and so being able to like extract insights out of that is really vital. And I think marketing can do a lot of that too, to sort of infer from the information that's collected during the sales process to kind of back into how they target the ICP at the front. So, another example of where sales and marketing can collaborate, using data.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been great having you on. We've got a bit of a tradition over here at the podcast with the final question. So the question is, in your entire career to date, within marketing, what is the best memory that you have and why?
The best memory that I've had, I think that do you ever watch are you familiar with the A-Team 1980s?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So do you remember George Papard, his tagline was, "I love it when a plan comes together."
Yeah.
So for me, I think that the number one thing is just I've only worked with small teams, with small marketing teams, and we just being ultra focused on small initiatives, small wins, and then taking those and just like punching above our weight class. And I don't know if I can come up with one, but it's like it's more of like the feeling of working with that small organization and just really crushing it and being just being super successful. Okay, so maybe that does reveal one. There was a company that bought. I was working for this one company. We were sort of the upstart, and we were doing all this marketing. It was myself and one other person, and content everywhere, really aggressive marketing. We were constantly nipping at the heels of this much larger company. And then the company ended up buying us. They came in for a tour. So they flew over, they arrived at our little office in Raleigh in North Carolina. And they went walking through, and they were all wearing suits. None of us were in suits. I think I'm sure we were in jeans. And I remember hearing that they asked where the marketing department was. And then someone just pointed to the office where it was just me sitting in the office. And they were like, that doesn't really compute too well. Yeah, that wasn't what their expectation was. So I think that's sort of that feeling of small teams doing big things. That's the best feeling.
Amazing. That's a great answer.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Peter, for joining us. This has been the Revenue Revolution podcast, sponsored by Jointflows. Until next time.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.